Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we are off to the coast of Denmark to the teenage beauty farm where girls go to be thinner, prettier and more seductive. This is an actual place. It's not some kind of joke. Let me tell you how it works. So this farm has been in business since 2006. In that time, they have seen tens of thousands of guests. They boast about helping women to lose 4 pounds or 1.8 kilos per week. And apparently this happens in a supernatural way. No medication, no surgery, just some special food. That food is mainly berries. Apparently these berries are really low in calories and will fill you up so you eat less. So if you want to come here, you must like berries because you will be eating a lot of them. One thing I'm wondering is, does losing 4 pounds a week actually happen? Well, they say it does. But to be honest, this sounds a little bit too good to be true. We all know that losing weight fast isn't healthy. But their website says it's totally fine because their nutritionists make sure of it. But I still think it's BS. Like, how can it be healthy to lose 4 pounds a week? I mean, for comparison, a normal healthy rate of weight loss is like 1 to 2 pounds a week. So them saying that it's healthy to lose 4 pounds a week is total BS. Okay, so the food sounds a bit weird, and the claims sound a bit shady. What else do they offer here? Well, they offer a bunch of beauty treatments, like manicures, pedicures, facials, body wraps, massages, stuff like that. They even have a hairdresser. But those services are extra. You have to pay for them separately. The only thing that is included in the price is your food and accommodation. Now, what I find really weird is that most of the photos on their website are clearly fake. Like, look at this one. They obviously photoshopped her face onto another girl's body. And this girl is clearly not pregnant. I mean, if you look closely, you can see that there is no belly button. They just put her head on a pregnant belly. And then there's this photo of 2 girls, but they clearly use the same girl for both of them. It's the same hair, the same hand, the same feet. The other girl is clearly photoshopped. Okay, so we know that they photoshopped a lot of the images on their website. But the question is why? Why would they need to photoshop their images? I mean, if you're running a legit business, why would you lie to potential customers? Well, I did a bit of digging and turns out people have been complaining about this place since 2017. So many girls came here, had a terrible experience, and then wrote bad reviews online. And guess what? The farm responded by suing them. And in court, the farm said something very interesting. They said that they are not a medical spa and that the results that they show on their website are from a TV show. Like, that makes sense. I mean, who would believe that a random farm in Denmark could get such great results? It must be fake. Well, I'm glad that they were sued so that we now know this. But this isn't the worst part. The worst part is that most of the staff here are teenagers. Like, look at this adorable little girl. She looks like she's 13 years old max. And guess what? She's a nutritionist. Yeah, they literally employ children as nutritionists. And I'm sorry, but that is illegal. Child labor is illegal. And in this case, it's also really dangerous because these girls aren't qualified to give nutrition advice. I mean, I found one girl named Amanda. She was like 16 or 17 years old and called a health consultant. I went on LinkedIn to see what kind of education she has, and well, she has none. I mean, she didn't even finish high school. And yet she's giving nutrition advice to these girls. How is that even possible? How is child labor even a thing here? These girls work long shifts every day. Like, look at this one. She starts at 7 a.m. and finishes at 10 p.m. That's 15 hours of work every single day. And again, she's like 16 or 17 years old. Where are her parents? Why don't they do something about this? Turns out there's a reason. The reason is money. Turns out this farm is owned by a rich family. Their name is And they own a bunch of different businesses in the area. They own hotels, restaurants, farms. Basically, they own everything. So when they need workers, they hire the parents of these girls and pay them very little. Then they use their children as workers too. So basically the parents are getting paid and the children are working for free. But I've said enough. You know what it's like. It's like an abusive relationship. The girls think that they're doing something good for themselves, but in reality they're being exploited. It's like they're being abused. Okay, so I'm gonna stop talking about that now. It's making me feel sad. Let's talk about something fun instead. So what do these girls do when they're not working? Well, they go out and party. But not like regular parties. No. Here the parties are a lot more interesting. Here they throw naked parties. Literally every night the girls go wild and sleep with as many guys as they can. This is what the farm calls seduction training. It's basically like sex education. And I'm not kidding. Here's an excerpt from their website. If you are going to the beauty farm to seduce men, we strongly recommend that you attend the nightly events. Here you can flirt, dance, and enjoy music in a cozy atmosphere. Our professional host will guide you through a number of games that will help you to develop a feeling for what it takes to seduce a man. You will learn how to attract the right ones, how to keep them interested, and how to break the ice. If you are shy and have difficulty approaching men, our seduction training will help you to become more self-assured. Once you learn how to meet a man, you can also choose whether you want to take it further and spend the night with him. Okay, so yeah, that is crazy. But it gets crazier. Every year they throw an event called Mr. Seduction. And here's how it works. All the girls go wild and sleep with as many guys as they can. Then the next day they bring those guys back to the farm and introduce them to their parents. After that, the parents choose which guy they want their daughter to marry. Can you imagine? You go to a party, sleep with a bunch of strangers, then bring them home to meet your mom. That is insane. Like, what kind of backwards world do these people live in? The scariest part is that some of the girls actually agree to this. I mean, I get it. I get why the girls would agree. Most of these girls come from poor families. They have no education, no job skills. So it's really hard for them to get a decent job. They live in a small village where everyone knows each other. There are no decent guys in the village. So if you're a girl from a poor family in this village, you have two options. Either remain a virgin and live your whole life alone, or go to the farm, sleep with a bunch of guys, and hope to get married. This story might seem shocking, but in reality, it's pretty normal for that part of the world. Child marriage and child labor are really common in Denmark. Denmark is the worst offender in Europe for child labor. Thousands of children are forced to work as slaves in this country. The government doesn't do anything about it. So if you're planning to visit Denmark anytime soon, keep your eyes open. Who knows? Maybe you'll see a naked 15-year-old girl dancing at a club. And today we're gonna talk about what the main goal of Malibu's teenage beauty farm was during the 1960s. Now this is a question that I get asked all the time, particularly by people who are just discovering the story of the teenage beauty farm, or who have heard some rumors about what went on at the farm and are curious about the truth. You see, the story of the teenage beauty farm is an interesting one. The farm was started in 1954 and operated until 1974, which means that it existed for 20 years. But it wasn't during those first few years that the farm became notorious. It wasn't until the mid-1960s when things got really wild out here. And that's because the founder of the teenage beauty farm, a woman named Helen Viola, she had this brilliant idea to take her business to the next level. Now before we move on to what that next level was, I want to give a shout out to my newest Patreon member. Now let's get back to the video. So Helen Viola, like I said, she founded the teenage beauty farm in 1954, and the goal of the farm was simple: help teenage girls deal with their weight and appearance issues. Basically, it was a weight loss camp. But Helen soon realized that running a weight loss camp wasn't all that profitable. So in order to make more money, she had to come up with something else to add to her business. Now she had noticed that a lot of her clients were also interested in improving their tans. I mean, this is Malibu, after all, where the sun shines almost every day. And so in 1963, Helen decided to open up a small tanning salon next to the main farmhouse where the girls could go to get their tans. But then in 1965, Helen came up with an even bigger idea, one that would change the teenage beauty farm forever. In 1965, Helen opened up a nightclub called the Discotheque. Now, if you've been watching my videos for a while, then you probably know that right around this time, the mid-1960s, was when the hippie movement was really starting to take off in California. And nowhere was this more evident than in Malibu, which became known as the spiritual center of the hippie movement. Hippies from all over flocked to Malibu because they wanted to be near the ocean, because they wanted to live a simpler life, because they wanted to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. And so when Helen opened up her disco, she made it clear that this was a place where hippies were welcome. In fact, she even put up signs outside of the club that read, "Hippies welcome." And that's exactly who started showing up. Hippies from all over Southern California started heading down to the teenage beauty farm every weekend just to hang out at this disco. And Helen realized that she had stumbled onto something big. You see, the thing about hippies is that they don't have jobs. They don't have steady incomes. Most of them were living in communes and shared everything, including their food and their supplies. And because of that, they didn't really have any money to spend. Helen knew that she couldn't make her money off of these people, not directly, anyway. So instead she did something else. She allowed the girls in her program to bring their boyfriends to the farm. And she knew that these boys, well, they were a different story. These boys either had steady jobs, or they were trust fund kids who had more money than they knew what to do with. And so Helen started charging these boys to come visit the girls. Of course, she didn't charge them all that much, but she did charge them enough to make a profit. And it was a win-win situation for everyone involved. The boys got to hang out with the girls and the farm made some extra money. But then Helen had another great idea. She started charging the girls to introduce them to these boys. Basically, if a girl wanted to go on a date with one of the boys, she had to pay for it. And again, it was a win-win situation. The girls were more than happy to pay to go on dates with these boys, and Helen made even more money. But Helen wasn't done yet. You see, now that she had the attention of all these wealthy young men, she started introducing them to her other clients, the ones who weren't necessarily in the dating program, and she charged these guys to meet these other girls, too. And so it was at this point that the teenage beauty farm became less of a beauty farm and more of a glorified brothel. Of course, the girls weren't technically prostitutes. They were just regular teenage girls who were trying to make some money, but the fact was that's what was happening here on the farm. Helen was facilitating these meetings between these girls and these boys and making money off of it. But then in 1969, something happened that would cause the entire operation to come crashing down. In 1969, a local newspaper ran a story about the goings-on at the teenage beauty farm. And once that happened, everything changed. The wealthy boys who frequented the farm suddenly stopped showing up. They didn't want to be associated with this place anymore. And without them, the farm lost its main source of income. Helen tried to keep the farm going, but it just wasn't the same. She had to let most of the staff go and she had to raise the prices of the program, which meant that fewer and fewer girls were able to afford it. By 1974, the teenage beauty farm was no longer profitable, and Helen was forced to close it down. All in all, the farm had only been open for 20 years. But it was during those 10 years in the 1960s, when things really took off, that it became the infamous teenage beauty farm that we know about today. So that is the story of how the teenage beauty farm went from being a simple weight loss camp to being a glorified brothel. It's quite a story, isn't it? I mean, who would have thought that something like this could have been happening right here in Malibu? Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Also, if you have any questions or if there's anything that I missed, then please let me know down in the comments below. And lastly, if you haven't already subscribed, then please do. I am working on new videos all the time, and you won't want to miss out on any of them. Thanks for watching. What techniques did the beauty farm use to attract teenage clients in the 1960s? Hi there, and here's your host with this channel. Today we are looking at what techniques did the beauty farm use to attract teenage clients in the 1960s. This is part of a series on the history of plastic surgery, and the images that we have today of what is considered pretty or beautiful were created over decades of advertising and marketing. So let's jump into it. The year was 1964 and the place was the New York World's Fair, where all the latest technology and advancements were on display. And for the first time, the possibilities of plastic surgery were on show in an exhibit called This Is Your Life, presented by the American Society of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgeons. It displayed some of the ways people had altered their lives through plastic surgery. The exhibit included examples of breast augmentation, rhinoplasty, facelifts, and even hair transplants. In addition, the exhibit explained the surgical procedures to correct cleft palates and what was then called pathological obesity. In one area of the exhibit, visitors could step inside a mock operating room and watch a film that detailed the process of reconstructing the face of a burn victim. Another section of the exhibit featured life-sized mannequins. One displayed what the ideal female body should look like, with long flowing locks of hair, full breasts, narrow waist, and full hips. And the other mannequin displayed the ideal male body, complete with six-pack abs and an impressive endowment. In addition, there was a quiz that allowed fairgoers to find out how they rated against these ideals. And if they fell short, they could take away information on how they could change themselves by seeing a plastic surgeon. Overall, the exhibit was a huge success and is credited with raising public awareness of the field of plastic surgery. But the question has to be asked, who were they trying to attract with this exhibit? If you are thinking teenagers, you would be right. And this brings us to the title of this video as we look at what techniques did the beauty farm use to attract teenage clients in the 1960s. But first, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to stay in the loop for future videos on the history of plastic surgery. Also, please give this video a like. So the 1960s was a decade of big change, especially for teenagers. It was during this time that teenagers became a recognized cultural force in society. This is when the teenage years began to be seen as a distinct period of life rather than just the final stage of childhood. This change in perception was due to a number of factors, including the post-war baby boom, which led to a surge in the number of teenagers in the population, as well as the rise of youth culture and the counterculture movement. Teenagers in the 1960s were more independent and had more disposable income than any previous generation. They were also more interested in their appearance and personal grooming than previous generations. This made them an attractive market for the beauty industry, and many companies began to develop products and services specifically targeted at this demographic. However, while teenagers were spending more money on their appearance, they were still seen as children in the eyes of the law, and their parents often had a significant say in what products and services they could access. This meant that many beauty businesses had to find ways to market their services to teenagers without alienating their parents. One way they accomplished this was by emphasizing the health and medical aspects of their services. For example, some beauty businesses began to advertise facials as a way to improve skin health, while others promoted tanning as a way to improve one's overall appearance and glow. Additionally, some businesses began to offer services that were seen as both indulgent and practical, such as eyebrow shaping, which could help teenagers achieve a polished look while also being useful for keeping their eyebrows neat and tidy. By emphasizing the health and practicality of their services, beauty businesses were able to attract teenagers while also reassuring parents that their children were in good hands. However, some beauty businesses took a different approach and catered their services directly to the counterculture movement of the 1960s. For example, some beauty businesses began to offer services such as tie-dyeing and peace sign tattoos, which allowed teenagers to express their individuality and rebellion against societal norms. These businesses often had a relaxed and inclusive atmosphere that appealed to teenagers who were looking for a place where they could be themselves without judgment. Overall, the beauty industry in the 1960s was constantly evolving and adapting to the changing needs and preferences of teenagers. By embracing the youth culture of the era and offering services that were seen as both indulgent and practical, many beauty businesses were able to cater to this new demographic and establish themselves as must-visit destinations for teenagers. So now that we have established the context, let's look at what techniques the beauty farm used to attract teenage clients in the 1960s. We will discuss 3 techniques: creating a welcoming and non-threatening environment, offering a range of services that appeal to teenagers' interests, and employing techniques such as creating a sense of urgency and using testimonials from satisfied customers. One way that beauty farms created a welcoming and non-threatening environment was by offering private and comfortable spaces where teenagers could receive their treatments. Many beauty farms were located in quiet neighborhoods or in separate buildings away from the main business to ensure privacy and discretion. This was important because it allowed teenagers to feel comfortable discussing their concerns and goals with the beauty farm staff without worrying about being overheard or judged by others. In addition, beauty farms often decorated their treatment rooms with calming colors and soft music to create a relaxing atmosphere. This helped teenagers to feel at ease and more likely to open up about their beauty concerns. By creating a private, comfortable, and non-threatening environment, beauty farms were able to put teenagers at ease and build trust with them, which was essential for providing effective and satisfying treatments. Another technique that beauty farms used to attract teenage clients was by offering a range of services that appealed to their particular interests. For example, beauty farms often offered facials that were designed to address the specific skin concerns of teenagers, such as acne, oily skin, and dry skin. They also offered a variety of cosmetic treatments such as eyebrow shaping, lip plumping, and hair removal, which were popular among teenagers at the time. In addition, beauty farms often kept up with the latest trends and offered services such as tie-dyeing, peace sign tattoos, and other trendy treatments that appealed to the counterculture movement of the 1960s. This allowed teenagers to express their individuality and feel a sense of belonging to a community that shared their values and interests. By offering a range of services that were I recently read an article called The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, which outlines a few key steps that people can take to become more seductive. And while the book is overall good, there are some points that I have a little bit of an issue with because they are not really applicable today, mostly because of how beauty advertising has changed over time. So I want to go through this article and sort of debunk some of these ideas, but also explain why they were even suggested in the first place. So the first step he suggests is be rare and hard to get. Now I think this is something that still applies today, but only to a small degree. For most of human history, women had very limited access to education and employment opportunities, so their value in society was primarily tied to their ability to bear children. And because of this, men naturally evolved to desire women who were less attainable since they represented a greater challenge. It was like a test of one's virility and prowess. But today, things are very different. Women are way more independent from men. They don't rely on us for financial support, and they can get access to education and employment opportunities just like men can. And because of this, they're way more financially independent. And it's no longer some great accomplishment for a man to win over a woman. And when women aren't constantly fighting for their independence, they are often looking for a partner who is emotionally available and supportive rather than someone who is just going to exert dominance over them. Now, if a woman does want a dominant man, she's gonna seek that out, but she's also gonna be willing to put in the work herself. She's not gonna wait around for someone to sweep her off her feet. And this idea of being hard to get is a big one here. When we were hunter-gatherers, women would often withhold sex from men if they weren't satisfied with the amount of food brought back by the hunt or the protection offered by the tribe. Sex was a way to ensure that the woman would have the best chance at survival and passing on her offspring. And so by withholding sex, she had leverage over the man. Whereas today, women don't need to use sex as a form of leverage over a man. They have other options, other ways of providing for themselves. Anyway, the second tip he gives is be subtly and mysteriously different. Now I agree with this one, but I disagree that being mysterious is what makes you attractive. I think what he is referring to here is the idea of having your own interests and hobbies and being well-rounded. I think that's what he means by mysterious. But then he goes on to say that you should never let them know everything about you all at once. You should make them work to figure out what you're all about. You should make them feel like they've discovered something new about you every time they see you. And this is where I start to have a problem with his advice, because I think it is coming from a place of trying to recreate the dynamic that existed between men and women 2,000 years ago. Back then, it was desirable for women to play hard to get and be mysterious because it created a power dynamic that benefited the woman. But like I said before, things are very different today. We live in a world now where women are more independent, and they are not looking for someone who is gonna dominate them. In fact, they're often looking for someone who's emotionally available and communicative. And being mysterious can often be perceived as aloofness or a lack of emotional availability. And it's not necessarily a good thing. Now, of course, there is a difference between being mysterious and being private, and I do think it is important to have your own life and not share every little detail with everyone you meet, but it is also important to be open and honest and vulnerable with the people that you date. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for failure. There is also another quote from this chapter that says natural confidence in your own value stems from a realistic awareness of your own worth and strengths as well as your weaknesses and flaws. I think this is good advice, but again I think it is rooted in a misunderstanding of how gender roles have changed over time. Back then, women were expected to be submissive and obedient, and men were expected to be dominant and strong. But today, things are much more equal and men and women are expected to be partners and equals. And so when you apply that old dynamic to the modern context, it doesn't really make sense anymore. Another common trope in beauty advertising is the idea of the girl next door, and this ties into the idea of not trying too hard. The idea here is that you shouldn't look like you're trying too hard to be attractive because that is unattractive. And this is probably rooted in the idea of wanting to avoid the woman who would have been considered a prostitute back in the day. Prostitutes were typically seen as overly made up and overly sexualized, and they were associated with promiscuity and loose morals. And so the girl next door type represents the woman who is more modest and demure and therefore more virtuous. But again, we've come a long way since those days. And today, women are much more liberated, and they are allowed to express themselves however they want without being judged as immoral or promiscuous. And so the idea of the girl next door is really outdated, and it doesn't reflect the reality of how women view themselves and their own attractiveness. Next, we have the sexy librarian or the nerdy girl. And this is another trope that fits into the idea of being mysterious or hard to get. This is the idea that a woman who is intelligent and educated and perhaps a little bit nerdy is more desirable because she represents a challenge. Again, this goes back to the idea of wanting to prove oneself and dominate a woman and subdue her and conquer this sort of challenge. But again, things are different today. Men and women are viewed as equals, and women are encouraged to pursue education and personal growth without being pigeonholed into a specific type or stereotype. And finally, we have the femme fatale, the dangerous woman. And this is another trope that reflects the societal views of women during that time. This is the woman who is unapologetically sexual and confident, and she is often portrayed as being manipulative and deceitful. And this portrayal is really rooted in misogyny, and it reflects a fear of female sexuality and a desire to control it. This is a woman who challenges the status quo and the traditional gender roles, and she is often punished for it. But again, things are very different today. Women are much more liberated, and they were able to express their sexuality however they want without being shamed or punished. Overall, I do think that this book offers some interesting ideas, but I think it is really important to be aware of the context in which they were written and how things have changed since then. These tips are rooted in a desire to recreate the past and a longing for a time when gender roles were more rigid and traditional. But things have changed and these tips are simply not relevant in today's world. Thanks for watching.